We're looking at another anamorphic adapter today, the SIRUI 1.25 times anamorphic adapter. It's a bit of a chunky boy, especially compared to the BLAZAR Nero 1.5 times anamorphic adapter, which I featured on the channel earlier in the year. So first we'll take a look at this adapter in use with some spherical lenses. I'm going to be using the SIRUI Nightwalkers on my Komodo. And then we're going to look at it when I combine it with an anamorphic lens. So we're going to be looking at it with this tiny little SIRUI Saturn, turning it into a 2 times anamorphic, shot on the LUMIX S5 2X. Finally, we'll compare the adapter to this little thing, the BLAZAR Nero 1.5 adapter. So SIRUI have been on a bit of a roll this year, and they launched a really nice set of lenses called the Nightwalkers. I featured them on this channel a few months ago. Check out the video if you want to know more about them, but basically they're just a really nice set of Super 35 fast compact primes. So I used them in conjunction with this adapter, converting them into 1.25 times anamorphic lenses, and you know, the footage was really nice. The optics on this adapter did appear to be very clean and sharp. It's not the most anamorphic footage I've ever shot, but there is something about it that I really like, and I guess that's also, you know, pairing it with the Nightwalker lenses, which have a lot of character, even when you're shooting with them on their own. They are quite grungy, so even without the adapter, there's quite a lot of chromatic aberration seen as green fringing when shooting wide open. So I found that I did have to stop down to around f4 to get a very clean result. And I think the presence of the adapter did emphasize that chromatic aberration a little bit more, maybe just amplified it. You know, there's a hint of the sort of anamorphic magic coming through. It's not super strong. You can see in some of these out of focus areas, you're starting to get just a hint of that elliptical stretch bokeh. If you wanted something that just had a hint of anamorphic, or if you wanted to shoot in 4:3 and get back to a 16:9 aspect ratio with a hint of anamorphic, you know, over using standard spherical glass, this could be a really nice option to give you a quite subtle and clean look. For me, this is where the adapter makes most sense. Taking one of SIRUI's existing anamorphic lenses, such as this little thing, the SIRUI Saturn, which is a 1.6 times, and chucking the 1.25 adapter on front of it and effectively supercharging it into a 2 times anamorphic lens. And when I shot with this on my LUMIX S5 2X, this footage just looks stunning. I have the neutral flare version of the lens, and just here you can see the sun popping out through the trees, and you just get these beautiful flares, and the whole thing just looks beautifully anamorphic. The original taking lens, the SIRUI Saturn, is a pretty clean and sharp lens anyway. I didn't really experience any massive degradation when I chucked this adapter on the front. The flaring of the lens came through as well. Adding the adapter to this lens does seem to do some weird stuff with the distortion inherent in the lens. This lens does exhibit some pincushion distortion, and quite aggressive pincushion distortion actually. And so adding this adapter to it did seem to somewhat amplify that or do something a bit weird. You can see definitely with motion, we're getting a lot of sort of distortion and movement and sort of, I don't know, almost like a weird fisheye effect where the center of the frame is sort of warping in a weird way relative to the fringes of the frame, and it looks a little bit distracting. Of course, it is possible to correct this to some degree, but I did find that where it's fairly easy to correct the pincushion distortion in post with just the lens, whatever was going on when you put this adapter on, it did seem a little more tricky to correct. And I feel like if you were filming inside or in a city with somewhere with lots of straight lines and buildings, that this may cause you a few issues. The SIRUI Saturn doesn't have a great minimum focus distance, and I felt like the adapter adds a little bit more onto that. So I was finding myself either using these screw-on diopters or sticking the LUMIX S5 2X into APS-C mode just to get a little bit of extra reach and get a little bit closer to my subject. I mean, it does look a bit ridiculous mounted to this tiny lens, but it is cool, as I said, being able to get a 2x anamorphic with this tiny modular setup. Hopefully SIRUI will release more focal lengths in this Saturn lineup that are compact and small. If they do, I think there'll be a really strong use case for an adapter like this across that series of lenses, because, you know, you can pack a ton of these little lenses in a camera bag and have that single adapter, and effectively you've got a whole range of focal lengths which are 2x anamorphic. With like these adapters, I think they're amazing what they can do and the flexibility that they give you, but they do come with a bit of management and faffing around, and they just add maybe another point of failure in your workflow, and it's just something you need to be very confident using so you don't mess up. Tested the BLAZAR 1.5x adapter early in the year. The video will be linked somewhere here. I really like that adapter. Optically, it's not perfect. It was quite fuzzy, it was quite grungy, but I quite like that. I quite like what it added to my spherical lenses. So I think comparing these two, you know, it's not a straight comparison. It's not a very fair comparison. The SIRUI adapter costs around £400. The BLAZAR adapter is more than twice that at over £900. Obviously, you're also comparing a 1.25x stretch with a much greater 1.5x stretch, so you're getting double the effect with the Nero. So they are different beasts, but I think it's worth, you know, looking at them together because I've got them here and I'm sure you'll be interested. The build quality on the SIRUI does feel a little more substantial, a bit chunky. The Nero does feel maybe a little bit more delicate and maybe sort of slightly less premium than the SIRUI, and again, because it's larger, it means you can mount it to larger lenses. It means you can use it across a much greater range of lenses than the Nero. It obviously means it's a lot heavier, so, you know, swings and roundabouts, but it meant that I could use this on my Vespids. I think they have like a 77 filter thread. This BLAZAR, the mount on this is 52mm. It's tiny relative to the SIRUI, so it really limits you to what lenses you can use. I think I used it on the LUMIX lenses and also a bunch of smaller vintage lenses, but that was about it. In terms of like the focal lengths that you can use between these two adapters, that's actually relatively similar on full frame and on Super 35. I'll show that up on screen now so you can see. But yeah, it's around sort of 40 to 135, and you can go a bit wider if you're using a Super 35. In terms of image quality between the two, they are very different. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. I prefer the look of the BLAZAR adapter, but it comes at the cost of its sort of image acuity and fidelity. It introduces a fair bit of chromatic aberration on, and you can see this a little bit on my side-by-side test, but one thing I noticed is that everything just was a bit softer and fuzzier on the BLAZAR lens. You had to stop down a little bit more on the BLAZAR in order to get a usable image. It wasn't really possible to shoot wide open on the BLAZAR, where the SIRUI was a little bit more forgiving. When I shot wide open on the LUMIX lenses, you could just about get away with it. That was an f1.8 with the SIRUI adapter. It was just way too soft on the Nero. I kind of feel if both these adapters came together and you took the squeeze factor from the BLAZAR with the build quality and the clarity of the SIRUI, then you'd have a really lovely all-in-one anamorphic solution, you know, and if they priced it in between the two adapters as well. I think this adapter makes much more sense if you're already invested in some 1.5, 1.6 times anamorphic lenses like the SIRUI Venus line of lenses. I think buying this would make much more sense. I did enjoy shooting with it on spherical lenses, but I would say the sort of like the faff and the management of it didn't quite justify the resulting image. Like, I wanted more of that anamorphic magic, and it just didn't really deliver that. I think if you are planning to use an adapter exclusively on spherical lenses, then you might want to consider something with a slightly stronger squeeze factor like the Nero or the Avascope or other offerings that might be out there. If you want something that's clean, retains sharpness, and gives you a very subtle stretched frame, then maybe this is all you want, especially as it's on the cheaper end of adapters. And you can shoot in 4.3 and get back to 16:9 relatively easy. That's what a lot of the original anamorphics were designed to do. So you can get a sort of very classic, subtle anamorphic look and finish your project in a standard 16:9 aspect ratio, which might be attractive to you, if you're finding it hard to sell an anamorphic look to your client. Anyway, thanks to SIRUI for sending me this adapter to check it out. Let me know what adapters you've been using. I'm kind of interested to know what else is out there. I'd love to try an avoscope at some point and shoot a project on that. I've been Ed Prosser, and until next time, see ya!